I've got this hack for limiters I've seen no one talking about, and this hack is going to help you shape the tone of your limiter and make it do what you want it to. See, when you push a limiter, it's going to change the tone of the signal, and when you're mastering, you're left trying to balance that change on a knife's edge between what's tasteful and what's just outright not sounding good. And that balance comes at compromises, dialing back the loudness, tweaking some of your EQ changes you made before the limiter, and that is where you'll be really surprised to learn there may be another way. See, I've been beta testing a limiter I can't talk about right now, and I've been monitoring the delta signal to listen to the tone of what the limiter is taking away. Is it taking out more low end, more top end? And then I'll go and tweak my parameters and mode settings to find something that isn't clamping down on the low end or top end in an unbalanced way. This isn't anything new, you can do this in FabFilter Pro L2, but then what happened was, as I was tinkering, I remembered something from the interview I did with Luca Predalesi about the delta signal and the doors for processing it can open up.
What benefit you have processing the delta alone on a separate channel? You can EQ your saturation, you can put reverb on your saturation, you can do so many cool things as a parallel. So there was an idea to use the delta mode in case you want to use it as a parallel plugin.
So let me show you what I sort of came up with. So where X equals the input, Y equals the output, and Z is the delta. Let's just put delta there. Sorry, I don't have my stylus today. So with that, we can assume Y, which is the output, equals the input plus delta. And then if we want to get the input signal, it is the output plus the inverse of delta. And then if we want to get the delta signal, that would be Y, which is the output plus the inverse of the input. Okay, so there we have it. Now, what happens if we filter the delta to manipulate the way that processor is interacting with the original signal? We'll have something that looks like this. Y equals X plus Z A, and A equals filter. Cool, huh? Now, this looks a little bit like something out of your algebra class, so let's get rid of it and start looking at signal processing chains, what this would look like. So what that would look like is X, which is your input, goes out to your Z, so you'll have a Z delta, and that will go into a filter, which is A, and that gets summed back with the original signal, and then you have your Y, which is your out. Pretty simple. Now, what we need to do here is to look at how we will build this in Meta Plugin, is if we get rid of this Z function here and actually do the routing. So to get that Z path now, that we're going to need to get the Y value, which is into a limiter, limit plus the inverse. We're going to have to rotate our X, and then those two will go into our filter here and out to the sum. That's what it looks like here on paper, and here's what it looks like in Meta Plugin. I've got Ozone Maximizer, which is taking, I think, -5 decibels on this mix here, and then so that's going to give me my Y signal, the Y limit, and then this neutron here is simply just rotating the phase of a signal, of the other signal, which has no limiting on it. I've just left it there so everything stays sample accurate. So I've got my X inverse and my Y output, which gets summed in this channel mixer and gives me the delta signal that goes into a filter where, yes, now I'll show you what I'm actually doing, and what I'm getting at with this filter hacking or this limiter hacking is that I can change the response of the delta signal. So if the delta signal is taking away too much top end, I can just attenuate how much of that delta signal is controlling the top end, how much is controlling the low end. It's not like a sidechain filter because the processing is already being done. I'm just affecting the tone of that processing, and that's what's sort of going on here. So before we get into listening to the before and after, if you've liked what you've heard so far, please consider subscribing to the channel and joining my newsletter via the link in the description below. So let's take a listen to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play this back with the delta signal untouched. So this will just be like this limiter working at -5 with no processing to it. And then I'll be switching between putting the top end filter, so it's a bit more snappy on the delta signal, or putting the low end filter here, so it's a little bit more extended in the low end. Let's take a listen to this. So you can hear how by affecting this delta signal, because what I've actually done for you is I've even placed the delta signal in here so we can listen to it. That's one use case, changing the tone of the delta signal of the limiter. And that's not necessarily the most practical method, but it's just me exploring the DSP. How else can we do this? Because once you can access the delta signal for manipulation, it opens up a world of application for this. So I wanted to show you how you could get creative with this. I've got 3 new alternate versions to that delta signal. One where I'm saturating the delta signal, another one where I'm slamming compression through it to compress the limited compressed signal. So I'm compressing the compression just because why not? And you get this really cool pumping effect. And then the third one is I'm widening the delta signal to add more width to it. So what we're going to do is this bottom one here is the before, so just the limiter working on its own. And then these 3 here are different variations of the delta signal being manipulated. So let's take a listen to this. So all in all, I think this is actually super wild, the ability to get in there and manipulate the delta signal of your limiter. Now, is this setup in MetaPlugin practical? Well, absolutely not, but it's something very cool, and I thought it was worth sharing. And I have more videos like this in this playlist over here where I do crazy shit like this, where I rebuild the vintage exciter, build a stereo widening plugin, and create a processor for punchier kicks. If you're into intricate DSP and fun manipulation of processing and mixing techniques, you're going to enjoy that playlist. So make sure to click on it, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, take care.